My daughter's scream shattered my world. "Shut up, don't you dare question me." As she slammed me into a chair, my grandkid's eyes burning with fear. I only asked about my stolen $5,000. That night, alone on a freezing Maine beach, my heart broke into 1,000 jagged pieces. She didn't just rob my money. She tore my soul apart. The sting of Claire's words still burned in my ears as I sat in her pristine kitchen. The smell of fresh-baked blueberry pie filling the air. I'm Helen Whitaker, a retired schoolteacher from a small coastal town in Maine, where the salty breeze and lobster boats were my daily rhythm for 68 years. After my son-in-law, Tom Donovan, died in a car crash 2 years ago, I left my cozy cottage to move into Claire's 3-bedroom home, just a mile from the rocky shore. She was my only daughter, 42, with 2 kids, Sophie, 12, and Liam, 9, whose laughter used to light up my world. I thought I was helping her through the grief, being the mom she needed. But I was wrong. It started innocently enough. "Mom, let's combine our bank accounts," Claire said one evening, her voice smooth as the tide. "It'll make paying bills easier for both of us." I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter, the one I'd rocked through nightmares, the one who'd clung to me when Tom's casket was lowered. So, I handed over my debit card and signed the forms. She smiled, promising, "I'll take care of everything, Mom. You just relax." But then, she took my phone to set up a family plan. My mail stopped coming to my mailbox. Claire said she'd rerouted it to keep things simple. When I asked to join the town's book club, she laughed softly. "Mom, you're too tired for that. Let me handle things." At first, I believed her care was love. But her eyes, once warm, now glinted like the cold Atlantic in winter. I started noticing her new designer purse, the way she'd leave the room when I asked about my savings. "Don't worry, Mom," she'd snap, her voice sharp as a nor'easter wind. I wasn't just a guest in her home anymore. I was a prisoner in her plans. And as I sat there, staring at the pie she'd baked to keep me quiet, a chill ran through me. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The Maine wind howled outside Claire's house, rattling the windows like a warning I couldn't yet hear. After Claire's venomous outburst in the kitchen, shoving me into a chair for daring to ask about my missing $5,000, I started to see the cracks in her facade. The woman I'd raised, the one who used to draw me lopsided hearts on Mother's Day, was gone. In her place was Claire Donovan, 42, a calculating stranger whose every smile hid a ledger. It wasn't just the bank account she'd co-opted. Claire had woven a web so tight I could barely breathe. My Social Security checks, once deposited into my own account, now funneled directly into hers. "It's easier this way, Mom," she'd said, her voice smooth as the polished oak table we sat at. "You don't need to stress about numbers." I'd nod, my throat tight, wanting to believe her. But then I noticed the mail. My bank statements, once delivered to our mailbox on Spruce Street, stopped arriving. "I set up paperless billing," Claire told me when I asked, her eyes flicking away. "Saves trees, Mom." I tried logging into my bank app one night, my fingers fumbling on the phone she'd upgraded for me. Password denied. I asked her about it over breakfast, my voice soft to avoid another scene in front of Sophie and Liam. "Oh, I changed it for security," she said, slicing an apple with precision. "I'll send you the new one later." She never did. Then came the purchases. A sleek leather couch appeared in the living room, costing more than my monthly retirement check. A shiny new dishwasher hummed in the kitchen, its price tag still taped to the handle, $1,200. I saw Claire driving a brand new Ford Explorer, its glossy black finish gleaming under the Maine sun. "Claire," I ventured one evening, my heart pounding, "where's the money for all this coming from?" She froze, her fork hovering over her lobster bisque. "Mom, don't start," she snapped, her voice low but sharp as a fishhook. "I'm handling the finances. You're not exactly a math whiz anymore." Sophie looked up from her plate, her 1 2-year-old eyes wide, while Liam, only 9, kept his head down, pushing peas around. I swallowed my words, the shame burning hotter than the bisque. Claire didn't stop there. She started whispering to our neighbors, her voice dripping with false concern. Mom's getting forgetful. I overheard her tell Mrs. Larson at the local diner. She misplaces things, gets confused. I'm just looking out for her. My cheeks flushed as Mrs. Larson nodded, patting Claire's arm like she was some kind of saint. I wanted to scream that I wasn't losing my mind. I'd balanced the school's budget for 20 years, for God's sake, but Claire's lies were a fog, clouding my place in this tight-knit town. She even told the pastor at First Congregational that I was too frail for Sunday services. "I'll pass on your love," she'd say, her smile as cold as the Atlantic in January. I stopped getting calls from my book club friends. My world shrank to Claire's house, her rules, her control. One night, I found a credit card statement buried in a stack of junk mail she hadn't hidden well enough. My name was on it, but the charges weren't mine. $3,500 at a Boston boutique, $2,000 for a spa weekend in Portland. My stomach churned. "Claire," I said the next morning, holding the statement, my voice shaking. "This card's in my name. What's going on?" She didn't even look up from her coffee. "You're imagining things, Mom. That's an old statement. Drop it." But her jaw tightened, and I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. She wasn't just hiding purchases. She was hiding a plan. I started paying closer attention. Claire would slip out to work at odd hours, her phone buzzing with notifications she'd silence when I walked by. The kids mentioned a big trip she was planning, but when I asked, Claire brushed it off. "Just a little getaway, Mom, you wouldn't enjoy it." Her words cut deeper than the kitchen knife she wielded. I wasn't just losing my money. I was losing my place in their lives. The Claire I'd loved, who'd cried in my arms when Tom died, was gone, replaced by a woman who saw my savings as her escape hatch. As I sat in my guest room, the walls closing in like a lobster trap, I felt a spark of something new, not just pain, but fury. I wasn't going to let her erase me. Not yet. The main sky was a bruise of gray. The kind that promised a storm but held back just to taunt you. I sat in the guest room of Claire's house, the credit card statement still crumpled in my fist, its numbers screaming betrayal $3,500 for a boutique splurge, $2,000 for a spa weekend I'd never seen. My heart pounded like a hammer against my ribs. But it wasn't just the money. It was the way Claire's lies had woven a cage around me, tighter with every passing day. I'd started sneaking glances at her phone when she left it on the counter, catching glimpses of emails about family vacations and new investments. But when I asked, her answers were as cold as the Atlantic waves crashing a mile away. "Mom, you're overthinking it," she'd say, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Just let me handle things." Then came the night that broke me. It was a Thursday, the kids tucked into bed, their soft snores drifting through the walls. I found a travel brochure on the kitchen table, glossy and mocking, advertising a 7-day Caribbean cruise. The price: $20,000 for 3, Claire, Sophie, and Liam. My name wasn't on it. I stood there, staring at the palm trees and turquoise waters, my breath catching like a fish on a hook. I'd taught Sophie to read, braided her hair, baked Liam's birthday cakes. Yet here I was, erased from their adventure, my savings footing the bill. I clutched the brochure, my hands trembling, and marched to the living room where Claire was scrolling on her laptop. "Claire," I said, my voice barely steady, holding up the brochure. "This cruise, it's paid with my retirement fund, isn't it?" Her eyes flicked up, cold and unyielding like the granite cliffs outside. "Mom, don't be ridiculous," she snapped, slamming her laptop shut. "You're too old for cruises. You'd just slow us down, get confused, maybe wander off the ship." Her words hit like a slap, each one a jagged shard tearing through me. "Slow you down?" I whispered, my throat burning. "I raised you. I carried you through Tom's death, and now I'm, what? A burden?" Claire stood, her face a mask of irritation. "You're making a scene again," she hissed. "Go to bed, Mom. You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't move. The room spun, the weight of her dismissal crushing me. I saw Sophie's face in my mind, her eyes bright with stories of the ocean she'd never seen, and Liam, giggling as I taught him to skip stones on the beach. They were my heart, my reason for staying in this suffocating house. But Claire had turned them into pawns in her game, using my money to buy their loyalty while casting me aside. I stumbled out the back door, the cold Maine air biting my cheeks. The beach was a short walk, its rocky shore glinting under a sliver of moon. I sank onto the damp sand, the brochure still in my hand, now crumpled like my spirit. The waves roared, relentless, but they couldn't drown the truth. Claire didn't see me as her mother anymore. I was a bank account, a means to an end, a ghost in her perfect life. Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness, but from a raw, searing pain that felt like it could split me in two. I remembered the nights I'd held Claire when she was little, promising her the world. I'd given her everything: my love, my trust, my life savings, and she'd traded it for a cruise I wasn't invited on. The wind whipped my hair, and I let out a choked sob, the kind that hurts your chest. "How could you?" I whispered to the ocean, my voice lost in its roar. "How could you erase me?" The brochure slipped from my fingers, carried away by a gust, and I didn't chase it. I sat there, shivering, my heart a shattered thing, knowing I'd hit the bottom of betrayal. But as the tide crept closer, something flickered inside me, a spark of rage, a refusal to disappear. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The Maine dawn broke cold and sharp, the kind of morning that cuts through your bones and wakes you up whether you want it or not. I sat on the edge of my bed in Claire's guest room, the crumpled travel brochure from the night before, still haunting me, a $20,000 Caribbean cruise I'd paid for but wasn't invited on. The pain of Claire's betrayal, her cruel words, "You'd just slow us down," clawed at my chest like a gull diving for scraps. But something else stirred inside me. A fire kindled on that windswept beach where I'd sobbed alone. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was Helen Whitaker, and I'd balanced books, raised a daughter, and buried a husband. I wasn't going to let Claire erase me. It started with a flyer pinned to a bulletin board at the town library, a place I hadn't visited since Claire deemed it too much for me. "Free financial literacy workshop for seniors," it read, promising lessons on protecting your money. I slipped out of the house that afternoon, telling Claire I was just going for a walk. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't stop me. The library smelled of old books and coffee, a sanctuary from her control. The workshop leader, a sharp-eyed woman named Ellen, spoke about hidden bank fees, unauthorized charges, and how to spot fraud. My heart raced as she described accounts drained by family members. "Check your statements," she said. Always. I hadn't seen mine in months. That night, I waited until Claire was asleep, her new Ford Explorer parked smugly in the driveway. I crept to her office, where she kept her laptop. My hands shook as I powered it on, praying she hadn't changed the password since I'd glimpsed it weeks ago. The screen lit up, and I was in. My fingers fumbled through her email, landing on a folder labeled Bills. There it was, a bank alert in my name, confirming a $15,000 transfer to a travel agency for the cruise. Another email showed a $10,000 loan application, my social security number scrawled across it. My stomach churned. Claire hadn't just spent my money. She'd forged my name to borrow more. I printed the emails, my breath shallow, and tucked them into my purse. The next morning, I walked 2 miles to the rusty Anchor Bakery, where my old friend Ruth Bennett was kneading dough behind the counter. Ruth, with her flour-dusted apron and warm gray eyes, had known me since our teaching days. I hadn't seen her in months. Claire had said she was too busy for me. "Helen," Ruth said, her voice soft as she pulled me into a hug. "Where've you been?" I slid into a booth, the smell of fresh scones grounding me, and poured out the truth. Claire's control, the missing money, the cruise. Ruth's face hardened. "She's stealing from you," she said flatly. "You need to fight back." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know. But I need proof." Ruth handed me a burner phone from her purse. "Use this," she said. "Don't let Claire see it." Back home, I hid the phone under my mattress and started a journal, a small leather notebook I'd kept from my teaching days. I wrote down every detail: the locked bank app, the missing mail, the $3,500 boutique charges, the cruise. Each word felt like a brick, building a case against the daughter I'd loved more than life. I called Ruth late one night, whispering so Claire wouldn't hear. "I found more," I said, my voice trembling. "She's using my name for a loan." Ruth didn't hesitate. "Come to the bakery tomorrow. I know someone who can help." The next day, Ruth introduced me to James Carter, a local attorney with a kind smile and a handshake that felt like a lifeline. We sat in the bakery's back room, the hum of the oven muffling our words. I showed him the printed emails, my journal, and the burner phone. "Claire's been draining me," I said, my voice cracking. "She thinks I'm too old to notice." James leaned forward, his eyes steady. "Helen, this isn't just theft, it's fraud. We can stop her." He gave me a card and a plan. "Document everything. Open a new bank account. And don't confront Claire yet." I walked home, the card burning a hole in my pocket, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. That night, I opened a new account online using the library's computer, transferring what little savings I could still access $2,000, a fraction of what I'd had. Claire didn't know. She was too busy planning her cruise, her laughter echoing through the house as she showed Sophie and Liam pictures of the ship. I watched them from the hallway, my grandkids' faces glowing with excitement, unaware their mother was bankrolling their dreams with my future. The pain was still there, sharp as a jagged rock, but it was no longer paralyzing. I gripped my journal, its pages heavy with truth. Claire thought she'd broken me, but she'd underestimated the woman who'd taught generations to stand tall. I wasn't just waking up, I was arming myself for war. The Maine air was thick with the threat of rain, the kind that hangs heavy over the coast, waiting to break. I stood in Claire's kitchen, my hands steady on the counter, clutching the burner phone Ruth had given me. My journal, now thick with pages of betrayal, $20,000 for a cruise, $10,000 in forged loans, $3,500 in boutique splurges was hidden under my mattress, a ticking bomb of truth. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, my heart a furnace of rage and resolve. James Carter, the attorney, had my emails and bank alerts, but he'd warned me, "We need something undeniable, Helen. Something she can't talk her way out of." I knew what I had to do. Claire thought she'd caged me, but tonight, I was setting a trap of my own. I waited until the kids were at a sleepover, the house quiet except for the hum of Claire's new dishwasher, another luxury bought with my retirement fund. She was in the living room, sipping wine, her laptop glowing with cruise itineraries. I slipped the burner phone into my pocket, its record button already on, and walked in, my voice calm but edged with steel. "Claire," I said, holding up a bank statement I'd printed at the library. "Why's there a $10,000 loan in my name for a boat I've never seen?" Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips, her eyes narrowing like a cornered animal's. "Mom, you're digging again," she hissed, setting the glass down hard. "I told you, I'm handling it. You're too old to understand this stuff." "Too old?" I shot back, my voice rising, the pain of her cruise betrayal fueling me. "I understand you're stealing from me, Claire. My savings, my social security gone for your vacations and toys." She stood, her face a mask of fury, and stepped closer, her breath hot. "You ungrateful hag," she spat. "I'm saving this family. After Tom died, he left me drowning in his debts, $100,000 in loans I didn't even know about. You don't need that money, Mom. You're just sitting on it, rotting in this house." Her words were a knife, twisting deeper than the night she'd shoved me. But the phone in my pocket was catching every syllable. Her confession, a noose tightening around her lies. I held my ground, my heart pounding like a storm surge. "You used me," I said, my voice low but trembling with rage. "You took my life's work to clean up Tom's mess, and you didn't even ask." Claire laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Ask? You'd have said no, and then what? We'd lose the house, the kids' future. I did what I had to, and you should thank me." The room felt like it was closing in, her arrogance, a suffocating fog. I wanted to scream, to tear her perfect world apart, but James's words echoed, "Don't tip her off." So I swallowed my fury, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not saving anyone, Claire. You're stealing my life." I turned and walked out, the phone still recording, her final scoff burning in my ears. The next morning, I slipped out to the Rusty Anchor Bakery, where Ruth was waiting with a cup of coffee and a worried frown. I handed her the phone, my hands shaking. "She admitted it," I said, my voice cracking. "She's using my money to pay off Tom's debts." Ruth's eyes widened as she listened to the recording, Claire's voice cold and clear. "This is it, Helen," she said, gripping my hand. "This is what James needs." I drove 10 miles to James Carter's office in Bar Harbor, the phone and my journal in a sealed envelope. He played the recording, his jaw tightening. "This isn't just theft," he said, his voice grave. "It's elder abuse, fraud, and a betrayal of trust. We're filing charges tomorrow." But Claire wasn't done. That evening, she cornered me in the hallway, her eyes wild. "I heard you went to town today," she sneered. "If you keep poking around, Mom, I'll have no choice. I'll tell everyone you're losing it wandering, forgetting names. I'll get you locked in a nursing home before you can blink." Her threat landed like a punch, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew I was onto her. I didn't flinch. "Do what you want, Claire," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm not invisible anymore." I walked away, my heart racing, knowing she'd just played her last card. I spent that night in my room, the door locked, my journal open. I wrote down her threat, every word, my pen digging into the paper. Claire thought she could silence me, bury me in a home to keep her secrets safe. But she didn't know the fire she'd ignited. James had the recording, the emails, the loan documents. The wheels were turning, and Claire was about to face a courtroom that wouldn't buy her lies. As the rain finally broke outside, hammering the roof, I felt a strange calm. The storm was coming for her now, and I was ready to stand in its center. The courtroom in Bar Harbor smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, its fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the oak benches. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded tightly. The weight of Claire's betrayal, $20,000 for a cruise, $10,000 in forged loans, her vicious threat to lock me in a nursing home pressing against my chest like a stone. James Carter, my attorney, sat beside me, his briefcase open, stacked with evidence. My journal, the burner phone recording, bank statements, and loan documents. Across the aisle, Claire sat rigid in a navy blazer, her face a mask of practiced remorse. She hadn't looked at me since I'd confronted her with the $10,000 loan, her confession captured on my hidden phone. The air was thick, not just with tension, but with the end of something I'd once called family. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called the room to order. My heart pounded like the Maine surf, but I kept my eyes forward, refusing to crumble. James rose, his voice steady. "Your Honor, Claire Donovan has systematically exploited her mother, Helen Whitaker, draining her retirement savings and forging her name on a $10,000 loan. We have undeniable proof, bank records, emails, and a recorded confession." He handed over the evidence, each page a nail in Claire's coffin. The judge flipped through the documents, her face unreadable. Claire's attorney, a slick man in a gray suit, stood to counter. My client was under immense stress after her husband's death. he said, his tone syrupy. These were misunderstandings, not malice. She was protecting her family. I wanted to scream. Protecting her family? Claire had stolen my life savings, cast me aside like driftwood, and threatened to erase my freedom. James didn't flinch. Your Honor, he said. Let's hear the defendant's own words. He played the recording from my burner phone. Claire's voice slicing through the room. You don't need that money, Mom. I'm saving this family. Tom left me $100,000 in debts. The courtroom went still. Sophie and Liam, sitting in the back with a social worker, stared at their mother, their faces pale. Claire's jaw tightened, her eyes fixed on the floor. The judge's voice cut through. This is damning, Miss Donovan. Do you deny this? Claire took the stand, her hands trembling slightly. I was desperate, she said, her voice soft, almost convincing. After Tom died, I found out he'd hidden business debts, $100,000 in loans and penalties. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just needed to keep us afloat. Her words were a plea, but they rang hollow. I stared at her. The daughter who'd once run to me for comfort, now a stranger who'd gambled my future to save her own. The judge leaned forward. You could have filed for bankruptcy, Miss Donovan. Instead, you committed fraud against your own mother. James called a final witness, Dr. Emily Harris, a local neurologist who'd evaluated me at James's request. Mrs. Whitaker is fully competent, Dr. Harris said, her voice clear. No memory loss, no cognitive decline. She scored perfectly on every test. The judge nodded, her pen scratching notes. I felt a flicker of pride I'd drawn that clock, named the president, and proven I wasn't the confused old woman Claire had painted. The judge's gavel came down, sharp as a lightning strike. The court finds Claire Donovan guilty of financial elder abuse and fraud, she declared. She is ordered to repay $150,000 to Helen Whitaker, effective immediately, through a structured restitution plan. All financial access is revoked, and Miss Donovan is barred from acting as a fiduciary for anyone. Out, the room exhaled. Claire's shoulders slumped, her blazer suddenly too big for her frame. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but Liam just looked away, clutching his sister's hand. I didn't feel triumph, only a heavy clarity. The judge turned to me, her voice softer. Mrs. Whitaker, you are reinstated as sole controller of your accounts. This court affirms your full autonomy. James squeezed my arm, his smile quiet but firm. I nodded, my throat tight, the weight of years lifting just enough to let me breathe. As Claire was escorted out, her attorney whispering in her ear, I caught Sophie's gaze. She mouthed, I'm sorry, Grandma. And my heart ached not for Claire, but for the kids caught in her storm. The courtroom cleared, leaving only the echo of justice. I'd won back my money, my name, but the real fight was just beginning. Rebuilding a life Claire had tried to erase. I walked out into the Maine rain, James's card in my pocket, ready to face whatever came next. The Maine sun broke through the clouds, painting the ocean in hues of gold and blue, as if the world itself was celebrating my victory. I stood on the porch of my new apartment, a modest one-bedroom just half a mile from the rocky shore, its walls bare but brimming with possibility. The courtroom's echo still lingered the judge's gavel. Claire's guilty verdict, the $150,000 restitution order, and the affirmation of my autonomy. I'd walked out of that Bar Harbor courthouse not just with my money restored, but with something Claire could never steal again, my sense of self. After years of her lies, her threats to lock me in a nursing home, and her draining my savings for cruises and loans, I was no longer the ghost in her house. I was Helen Whitaker, whole and unbroken. I moved into this apartment a week after the trial, my name on the lease, a mailbox key dangling from a chain in my pocket. It was small, 800 square feet, with a view of the Atlantic that greeted me each morning. I hung a watercolor I'd painted a lighthouse standing firm against a storm on the living room wall, a quiet promise to myself. The kids, Sophie and Liam, came with me, their custody temporarily granted by the court until Claire's house arrest ended. I'd worried they'd resent me, blame me for their mother's fall. But when Sophie ran into my arms outside the courthouse, her tears soaking my coat, she whispered, "Grandma, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I love you." Liam clung to my hand, his small fingers trembling. "Can we stay with you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Always," I said, my heart swelling despite the cracks Claire had left. That first night in the apartment, we sat on the floor, eating pizza from a local joint, the kids giggling as sauce smeared their chins. Sophie, 12, sketched a picture of a sailboat, her pencil flying across the page. "This is for you, Grandma," she said, her eyes bright. "For our new home." Liam 9 chimed in. "Can we go to the beach tomorrow? I want to find shells." Their laughter was a balm, stitching together the wounds of Claire's betrayal. I'd lost a daughter, but I'd gained a family, one built on love, not lies. I tucked them into their new beds, a bunk set I'd bought with my reclaimed savings, and kissed their foreheads. "We're gonna be okay," I whispered, and for the first time in years, I believed it. Ruth Bennett stopped by the next day, her arms full of blueberry muffins from the Rusty Anchor Bakery. We sat on my porch, the scent of salt and pine mingling with her baked goods. "You did it, Helen," she said, her voice warm as the coffee she poured. "You took your life back." I sipped my mug, the warmth spreading through me. "I thought I was helping Claire by giving her everything," I said, my voice steady but heavy. "But she didn't need my money. She needed my silence." Ruth nodded, her eyes soft. "You're not silent anymore, and this town knows it." Word had spread. Neighbors who'd once believed Claire's lies about my confusion now stopped me at the grocery store, offering apologies and hugs. I wasn't the frail old woman Claire had painted. I was the teacher who'd fought back. I started volunteering at the library, teaching seniors how to check their bank accounts online, a skill I'd learned the hard way. Each click of the mouse felt like a rebellion, a way to keep others from falling into the trap Claire had set for me. I joined the book club again, diving into novels with women my age who welcomed me like a long-lost sister. The ocean outside my window sang a new song, not of loss but of renewal. I wasn't just a grandmother or a victim. I was a woman who'd refused to be erased, who'd turned pain into power. As I stood on the beach one evening, Sophie and Liam running ahead, their laughter dancing with the waves, I felt the weight of Claire's actions lift. She was under house arrest, her world narrowed to the house she'd once ruled. I didn't hate her, I couldn't, but I no longer carried her lies. My life was mine again, built on truth and the love of 2 kids who saw me for who I was. I picked up a shell, smooth and white, and slipped it into my pocket. The tide was turning, and I was ready to teach the world what I'd learned. The Maine sunset spilled across the horizon, a quiet fire of orange and pink as I stood on my apartment's porch. The ocean's whisper a steady companion. Claire's betrayal, $20,000 for a cruise, $10,000 in forged loans. Her threats to silence me had nearly broken me. But in that Bar Harbor courtroom, I'd reclaimed my life, my savings, and my voice. Now, with Sophie and Liam's laughter filling my new home, I'd learned lessons I wished I'd known sooner. If you're listening, let me share them, because no one should walk the path I did. First, guard your finances like your freedom. Check your bank accounts weekly. Keep your passwords private. And never let anyone, family, or not control your money without transparency. I learned this the hard way when Claire locked me out of my own accounts. Second, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, like missing mail or sudden purchases, ask questions, even if it's uncomfortable. My silence let Claire's lies grow. Third, seek help early. Friends like Ruth Bennett or professionals like James Carter can be lifelines. I found strength in a library workshop and a lawyer's office, places I'd never have turned to if I'd stayed quiet. Your voice matters, no matter your age. I was 68, called confused by my own daughter, but I proved I was anything but. If my story stirs something in you, anger, hope, or a memory of your own, share it. Leave a comment on the Unwanted Revenge. Tell us what you've faced, what you've overcome. Hit that like button if you believe no one should be erased. Subscribe to join us, because stories like mine need to be heard. I'm not just a grandmother now. I'm a woman who fought back, and I'm still here, standing tall by the sea,